Memories of a Bampi. Neville, known to his grandchildren as Bampi, sat in his home in Merthyr Tydfil, letting his mind drift back to the days when his grandchildren were small. Now, Johan was 25 and building a life for himself in Australia, while his sister Seren, aged 21, was studying at university in Monaco. It was hard to believe they were the same children who used to run through his front door. Bampi had taken early retirement from the Royal Mail at just 57. He hadn't even had time to settle into his new routine before his daughter, Anne-Marie, had an idea. If he could collect the children from school, she could take up a full-time position with the NHS. With plenty of time on his hands, Bampi didn't hesitate to agree. At the time, Seren was in the infants, and Johan was in the juniors at the same school. Those afternoons became a cherished ritual. Every day, Bampi would bring them back to his house, whip up his legendary cheese and onion toasties, and they would sit together watching Gavin and Stacey. No matter how hard he tried to offer them something different, the answer was always the same: cheese and onion toasties and Gavin and Stacey. Another favorite treat was crushed bourbon biscuits sprinkled over ice cream, a combination Bampi enjoyed just as much as they did. Another firm favorite on the school run was the trip to the sweet shop. Bampi would give them each £1 to spend, and their different personalities shone through immediately. Johan was always the sensible one. He would carefully choose just one packet of sweets or a chocolate bar and dutifully hand the change back. Seren, however, made sure she spent every single penny, emerging with her arms full of treats. This went on for some time, until Bampi began to worry that she was eating far too much sugar before dinner. So, one day he handed over the money with a new rule. They were allowed to buy only one item, and he expected to see change left over. Johan came out of the shop exactly as he always did, handing back his coins without a fuss. But Seren, she appeared clutching the largest bar of chocolate Bampi had ever seen in his life. "Only one thing, Bampi," she declared proudly, holding out a single penny. "And here's your change." It was a special offer, she said. Bampi was lost for words. All he could manage was, "Don't think you're eating all that before tea." But deep down, he had to admit she had him over a barrel. Technically, she had followed the rules. He recalled another day when Anne-Marie was held up at work. Caught off guard with no food ready, Bampi turned on a computer game for Johan and took Seren with him to the shops. Weeks later, when he had to tell her off for something, she looked him straight in the eye and said, "Anyway, I told Mammy you left Johan on his own." She had well and truly stitched him up. On another occasion, Seren was dashing about in Bampi's living room when she suddenly tripped and fell. Unfortunately, she hit her head right on the sharp corner of the coffee table, leaving a nasty gash just above her eye. Bampi acted quickly to stop the bleeding, but her mother Anne-Marie knew they couldn't take any chances, so she rushed Seren straight to A&E. There, the doctors had to put in a few stitches to close the wound properly. Although it healed well, the accident left a tiny scar that is still faintly visible today. Seren wasn't shy about telling Bampi exactly what she thought, either. She told him it was a ridiculous place to put a coffee table, insisting that if it hadn't been there, none of it would have happened. Bampi didn't have a single word to say in reply. Now that little mark serves as a permanent little reminder of those days. There was also a moment he regretted. When Johan asked why Bampi and Nanny didn't live together, he simply replied that they argued too much and decided to live apart. He thought the matter was closed, but months later, Anne-Marie phoned. Johan was distraught because she and her husband, Jason, had had a small argument, and the boy was terrified it meant they would split up too. Bampi apologized deeply. He had never realized his words would cause such worry. After that, He was always very careful what he said in front of them. Thankfully, there were far more happy memories than difficult ones. During the school holidays, days out were a regular occurrence. He remembered a sunny day at Carfarthfa Park. The children wanted to paddle, but before Bampi could stop her, Johan encouraged Seren to dive in and swim, and she jumped straight into the shallow pool, fully clothed. She stood up dripping from head to toe with a huge grin, and all Bampi could do was shake his head and take her home to dry off, wrapping her in one of his big t-shirts. It was frustrating then, but it made him smile now. On another beautiful day, he took them for a picnic on the mountainside where he had grown up. They scrambled through the ferns, and Bampi showed them how to make bows and arrows from branches, just as he did as a boy. When Seren shouted that she'd found a snake, Bampi's heart raced until he realized it was just a harmless, slow worm. Later, while eating their sandwiches, Seren was most put out that Abby kept trying to share her lunch, a story she told everyone with great delight afterwards. When they got home, Johan said, "Bampi, that was the best day ever," which made his heart swell with pride. Not long after, Bampi met Linda, who later became his wife, and she joined them on their adventures. One trip to Langors Lake started calmly, but on the walk back through the fields, the children began pushing and shoving. It ended when Johan pushed Seren, and she landed face first in a massive, wet cow pat. "That's it. No ice cream for either of you," Bampi declared. But Linda was the voice of reason, cleaning Seren up in a nearby stream. By the time they got back to the car park, everyone was laughing, and the ice creams were enjoyed after all. Now, looking at who they have become, Bampi feels a deep sense of pride. They are making their mark on the world, thousands of miles apart, but still his babies. He looks back on those days with joy, knowing he played a small part in helping them become the amazing people they are today.